Hey travelers, welcome to Beyond OP in the Fantasyverse, the ultimate realm where overpowered heroes, dark magic, and wild isekai adventures come to life. If you're into epic fantasy stories, morally gray choices, world-breaking powers, and a dash of chaos, you're exactly where you need to be. New worlds drop often, so grab your gear and prepare to get isekai'd.
Survive or Rot, my first day at Ebonspire Academy. Chapter 1. A World Not My Own. Darkness swallowed everything. Not the poetic kind of darkness. Not the silence of a starless night or the gentle lull of dreamless sleep. This was obliteration, a sensation so absolute it stripped away thought, self, even the concept of before. And then, as suddenly as it came, the pain returned, surging like venom flooding into an open wound. Kaelen screamed. The sound scraped up his throat like broken glass, but it was the sudden rush of feeling that truly shattered him. Hot air searing his lungs, 1,000 cuts blooming across his skin, a migraine of heat and sound and light collapsing all at once. When his vision finally clawed its way back to him, the sky overhead was not his own. No city lights, no airplanes, no satellites trailing silently like slow comets. Only a bruised, smoke-streaked sky, tinged violet with an unfamiliar sun that seemed too large, too heavy, too hungry. He was lying on jagged black rock that felt like the cooled surface of a volcanic wound. The ground radiated a faint, acrid heat. Sharp winds carried ash and the iron scent of blood, and the air itself. Kaelen tasted it. Thick with magic, alien and caustic, like breathing in smouldering parchment and forgotten secrets. It buzzed faintly in his bones, as if the laws of physics themselves were waiting to be rewritten. He sat up slowly, blinking away sweat and soot, his body trembling with nausea. He wore no armor, no shoes, just a scorched academy uniform, not his own, but one tailored to him nonetheless. Coarse black fabric with red-threaded runes stitched subtly into the sleeves. The sigil on his chest, a coiling serpent devouring its own tail. Somewhere, deep in his soul, the name of the place came unbidden. Ebonspire Academy. The words slid into his mind like a key into a lock, and suddenly he knew things he should not. How this place tested the limits of its students not just through combat or theory, but through survival. How most never made it past their first year, how the curriculum demanded blood, and how the rewards for success were beyond comprehension. A class, a true one, divine and permanent, the very soul reshaped into a weapon. Kaelen's heart pounded harder. A distant part of him wondered, was this a dream, a coma, a dying delusion? Then the scream shattered the silence. It came from nearby, raw, human, laced with terror. Kaelen rose, his limbs weak but functional. Every joint ached as though he had been pulled apart and reassembled. As he staggered toward the sound, the terrain shifted. Massive, petrified roots jutted from the ground like the bones of a buried titan. The charred remnants of trees loomed in twisted silhouettes, their trunks blackened and glassy. And then he saw them. Two figures, both young, no older than 20. One stood holding a blade made of flickering bonefire. The other, on their knees, bled from their nose and mouth, hands raised in surrender. A third figure, smaller, lay face down behind them, unmoving. "Don't make me do this," the standing one snarled. She was lean, angular, with short silver hair and eyes that glowed like lantern oil. Her uniform marked her as a first year. Same as him. Her sword, though, it was not standard issue. "You already did," coughed the kneeling one. He laughed, blood bubbling in his throat. "Your class is showing, freak." The girl lunged forward, and her blade tore through the boy's chest in a sweeping arc. His body fell limp in her arms, and she let it slide gently to the ash-coated earth. Kaelen didn't speak, didn't move. The girl turned slowly, her expression unreadable. Her eyes locked onto his. "You saw nothing," she said. A pause hung between them. Kaelen could feel something roiling beneath his skin. A heatless fire. A crawling, whispering sickness that begged to be unshackled. Kaelen said nothing. He remained half-shrouded behind a splintered tree husk, the bark blackened and flaking like dried blood. Ash swirled lazily through the scorched grove, settling on his shoulders like funereal snow. His breathing slowed as instinct took over, not the instinct of a hero rushing to intervene, nor a coward frozen in place, but the practiced stillness of someone observing. The silver-haired girl wiped her blade with a swatch of cloth torn from the fallen boy's robe. Her movements were clean, methodical, precise. Not the shakiness of someone who had just committed their first kill. Kaelen had seen people lie, bluff, posture. This wasn't any of those. She'd done this before. Twice more she scanned the tree line, eyes lingering just slightly too long on Kaelen's hiding place. But she said nothing further and made no move to investigate. Instead, she knelt over the boy's corpse and pried a small, glowing shard from the center of his chest. The light pulsed dimly, a reddish-purple sliver of fractured essence, like crystal dipped in shadow. A soul fragment. Another whisper flitted through Kaelen's mind, uninvited but certain. It wasn't his voice. Not entirely. It felt older, deeper, stitched with some unknowable truth. Power lost in death can be harvested by the cunning. One's soul leaves behind what the flesh could not contain. He didn't know how he knew that, but it rang with the cruel certainty of gravity. The girl slipped the fragment into a pouch at her hip, wiped her hands clean, and walked away without looking back. Her footsteps left almost no imprint in the ash. Only after she vanished into the smoke-thick woods did Kaelen exhale. His hands were shaking, not with fear, but hunger. A low, warm tremor coiled around his spine, the same sensation he'd felt during the murder. That lingering presence, that thrill. The ash stirred behind him. He turned quickly. Nothing. But the shadows were darker now, thicker, more alive. They whispered in a tongue just beyond understanding, clawing at his senses. Then, like a match struck in the dark, the magic surged. It wasn't like the structured, crystalline spellcraft he had studied on Earth. This was raw, chaotic, as if he had reached into a rotting wound in reality and pulled out the infection. Something writhed in his palm. He hadn't even meant to cast. A thin black thread of energy curled upward like smoke, twisting and writhing like a serpent made of ink. It pulsed with sickness, with entropy. And then, Affliction Warlock, Class Awakening, initiated. A column of black fire erupted silently around him. There was no heat, no noise, just the sickening pull inward, like his soul was being peeled. It burrowed into his memories, into his pain, into every grudge, every betrayal, every buried scream. He choked down bile as the fire etched itself into his bones. Class unlocked. Affliction, Warlock. Passive, decay of form. Enemies afflicted by your magic suffer gradual erosion of physical defenses. Active, Witch's Rot, a spreading blight that weakens and corrupts all it touches. Active, Soulbrand, mark a target with a burning sigil. Your next spell echoes twice on the afflicted. Passive, Essence Reaver. Recover small fragments of soul essence from cursed or dying targets for crafting. When the fire vanished, Kaelen stood changed. His skin bore no marks, but he felt it. Something beneath his surface had been rewritten. The world smelled sharper, fouler. His heart beat slower. Shadows twisted when he wasn't looking directly at them. A small message glowed faintly in the back of his vision, like an afterimage burned onto his mind's eye. Plus, one soul fragment acquired. He turned to the body that had been left behind. The third one, the small figure face down in the ash. With dread and curiosity twining together, Kaelen approached. A girl, barely older than 17. Her hand was clutching something, half crushed in her fist, a carved wooden token in the shape of an owl. Her lips moved faintly, eyes fluttering. Alive, but barely. Kaelen stood over her. He could end her now. He could walk away. He could try to save her. No one was watching. No one would stop him. But the world was watching, and the class inside him waited, silent and hungry. Kaelen knelt beside the girl, eyes studying her with clinical detachment. Her breathing was shallow, wet, each exhale rasping like torn parchment. Her eyes rolled faintly beneath fluttering lids, lost in unconscious spasms. The carved owl token was still clenched tight in her fist. Splinters had pierced her palm, blood seeping slowly through the cracks. There was a time in the other world when Kaelen might have panicked, tried CPR, screamed for help, anything. But this wasn't Earth. That boy wasn't taken to a hospital. The girl with the sword didn't hesitate. And now, Kaelen felt something different curling in his chest. Not remorse, curiosity. Power without certainty is wasted. Claim understanding through pain. The words weren't his. They came from deep within. Not a voice, but a pressure, a presence that had rooted itself inside him the moment his class awakened. Cold, watchful, amused. Kaelen extended his hand over the girl's chest. His fingers moved instinctively, etching symbols in the air that glowed a bruised violet black. No chant, no incantation, just will, laced with venom and malice. The spell blossomed like rot blooming beneath skin. Lesser hex, necrotic thread, a thin, sinewy strand of darkness slipped from his palm and touched the girl's sternum. Immediately, her body convulsed. Her back arched unnaturally, bones creaking under strain as veins blackened, crawling up her neck like spider legs beneath her flesh. Her eyelids snapped open, and for a split second, her pupils vanished, replaced by spiraling sigils of affliction. She tried to scream. What came out was a gurgled rasp as thick, black ichor spilled from the corners of her mouth, her nostrils, her eyes. Her skin blistered, then cooled. She slumped, not dead, yet, but close. Her aura flickered like a dying lantern. And Kaelen, he felt it. A rush, a surge of something not quite adrenaline, not pleasure. It was darker than that, more fundamental. The spell connected him to her life force. He felt it flailing, flinching beneath his influence. Felt how the spell lingered, a cruel infection crawling through every nerve. Not just damage, suffering. And beneath that suffering, power. Plus, one soul fragment, lesser, corrupted, affliction proficiency, plus one essence reaver activated, trace materials extracted for crafting. A faint residue shimmered in the air. Filaments of shadow twisted into barely visible motes. They drifted toward Kaelen's outstretched hand and vanished into his skin. They tingled, leaving behind a sense of growing hunger. The girl was barely breathing now. Her face was pale, eyes half-lidded, heart fluttering against death's door. The token had fallen from her fingers. Kaelen stared at her for a long moment. No one came. The wind howled faintly through the trees, like the ghosts of those who died, learning too late that Kaelrath had no mercy. And yet, from the girl's satchel, something glimmered, a faint pulse of heat and light. He reached in and withdrew a small glass vial filled with dark red fluid, thick, swirling with flecks of gold. Unidentified elixir, arcane signature. Detected use, unknown value. High. But even as he examined it, the body beneath him stirred. Again. Despite everything, her fingers twitched. Her lips moved. Barely audible, a rasp escaped them. Please. She was still alive. Still aware. Barely. Kaelen looked down at her. The girl's body was wrecked, writhing weakly, chest barely rising, blood pooling in the hollow of her neck. Her face was smeared with ash, ichor, and tears. Yet somewhere beneath the pain-glazed eyes, a spark of will still remained. Please, she whispered again, though her lips barely moved now. Not a scream, not even a plea, just the faint echo of someone who still hoped for anything. Kaelen did not feel pity. He did not speak. Instead, he twisted his wrist ever so slightly, and the necrotic thread responded. The writhing black filament deepened its hue, becoming viscous and pulsing. It coiled tighter around her heart like a serpent in its final breathless constriction. The reaction was instant. The girl's body spasmed, back arching violently. Her mouth gaped wide in a silent scream, and her eyes turned black as ink. For a heartbeat, her soul flared like a candle in a tempest, and then collapsed, folding in on itself like dying embers. The last breath left her lips as a gentle, trembling sigh. Stillness. But Kaelen felt what came next. The moment her soul slipped free, something moved inside him. A draw, a feeding, not of flesh, but of essence. The affliction. Warlock's gift. The Reaver's curse. A stream of faint lights, sickly and red, rose from her chest and coiled into his hand, seeping into his skin like warm smoke. It carried the residue of her thoughts, her pain, her fear, and her potential. +1, soul fragment, complete. Affliction, proficiency. +2, unique soul trait harvested. Memory echo, talon shade. Crafting. Essence, lesser life thread. X1 acquired alignment shift, -1. Benevolence. Kaelen stood slowly, his hands still glowing faintly from the harvest. His vision sharpened again. The world felt clearer, crisper. There was no guilt, only an awareness that he now stood higher than he had moments ago, stronger, colder, more certain. Beneath his boot, the owl token crunched underfoot, and then came the sound. A low hum of energy flickered in the air. A ripple, like someone had thrown a pebble into the fabric of reality. Kaelen turned on instinct and saw them. 3 figures at the edge of the grove, cloaked in black and gold. Not students, older. Uniforms marked with the sigil of the Ascendant Instructors. Observers, evaluators, enforcers. One stepped forward, his voice low, resonant with magical authority. "You've killed 2 today. 1 through a mission, 1 through execution." His eyes glowed faintly beneath a veil-like hood. "Do you know what this means?" Kaelen said nothing. The hum of power in his veins was still fresh, addictive. He could feel the spell residue still burning under his skin. The man gave a nod, not of approval, not of disapproval, something colder, professional. "It means you pass." A glowing brand shimmered in the air before Kaelen. Arcane script arranged in sharp, angular glyphs. It twisted toward his chest and burned into the fabric of his uniform. Academy recognition, survival proving grounds, cleared. Assigned dormitory, Obsidian Hall. Current status, candidate class. Affliction Warlock, awakened. Mental profile, noted. Alignment flagged, volatile. The other 2 instructors didn't speak. They merely turned and vanished, step by step, into shimmering rifts of black steel and violet light. The man lingered only a moment longer. "We'll be watching you, Kaelen. Closely." And then he, too, was gone. The grove was silent once more. Kaelen stood alone beside 3 corpses and a stain on the world that would never quite fade. Above him, the sky darkened. Ebonspire's bell tolled across the dying forest. The real trials were about to begin.
If you enjoyed the journey, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a twist in the fantasyverse. Got a theory, idea, or just want to geek out? Drop a comment below. I'm always reading.